Welcome, everyone. I'm Amy Milne, Executive Director of the Quilt Alliance, and I'm connecting from the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in Western North Carolina today. I love seeing all the introductions. Please introduce yourself in the chat if you'd like to. We're so glad you chose to join us for a very special Textile Talks. Today, we'll see seven-time Tony Award-winning actor, playwright, and quilter Harvey Fierstein, interviewed for the QSOS Oral History Project by quilter, author, and host of the Quilting Nook community, Zak Foster. If you're not familiar with our series, Textile Talks is a weekly series presented on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time by the Quilt Alliance and our three partner organizations, International Quilt Museum, Studio Art Quilt Associates, and Surface Design Association. All Textile Talks are recorded and available via YouTube. And let me tell you a little bit about the Quilt Alliance in case you're not familiar. Our mission is to document, preserve, and share the stories of all quilts and all quilt makers. The QA is a nonprofit, member-supported organization open to anyone, quilters and non-quilters, quilt lovers of any style, age, skill level, or location. We have individual members and guild group members, and our community has never been larger or more active. And if you're not already a member, please consider doing so today and check out our 2026 Tell Your Story Quilt Challenge. The deadline for the challenge for digital submissions is January 15th, so you still have plenty of time to work on a quilt over the holidays. So just a few notes. You can connect to captioning. We have a live captioner on the call today who is providing captions. You just turn on the captions using the CC or live captions button. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box versus the chat box. The chat box is great for greetings or if you need tech help. And be sure to answer our survey at the end of the event. That way we can get your ideas for improving this series. Let me go back one. I think I missed. Oh, there we go. So you can, another way you can support the Quilt Alliance, you can become a member, or you can also buy a ticket for our Spotlight fundraiser, which is sort of the after party for today's Textile Talk. Here is a QR code, and Emma's also going to, my colleague Emma Parker is with me today. She's going to put that link in the chat box too. We're going to have artist Stephen Skybell, Liza Pryor-Lucy, and Michael Michalski join Harvey and Zak and QA staff in a Zoom meeting room for a fun conversation about quilting, Broadway, and common threads between the two. You'll have a chance to ask questions, win door prizes, and your $25 donation will benefit the Quilt Alliance and help us continue doing the work of documenting, preserving, and sharing the important history of quilts and their makers. Now, let me tell you just a little bit about the project, Quilters Save Our Stories. Today we're going to see Zak Foster interview Harvey Fierstein for this historic oral history collection. Each QSOS interview is an audio recorded conversation, including video in this case, between an interviewee who is a quilt maker and an interviewer who can be anyone, a friend, family member, a community member. Interviews typically last between 30 and 45 minutes and begin with or focus on a single touchstone quilt, which is a quilt selected by the interviewee. And the interview can cover a range of topics, including learning to quilt, current quilting habits, studio spaces, quilting and social interactions, and the importance and meaning of quilts more broadly. Completed interviews are available to read or listen to on the QSOS website. They're also archived with our archival partners, the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress and the Louis B. Nunn Center for Oral History at the University of Kentucky Libraries. QSOS interviews can be used as inspiration for research and for entertainment. The collection includes over 1,200 recorded interviews with quilt makers from novices to professionals. Anyone can be interviewed or serve as an interviewer for the project. And Zak Foster has been interviewed for QSOS as well, and it's wonderful today to have him on the other side of the mic. And Emma will put some links in the chat. I can see you're already doing that if you want to follow up and find out more about this project. So we're going to move on to some introductions, and then I'm going to turn over the mic and the camera to Zak and Harvey. Harvey Fierstein's legendary career has transported him from community theater in Brooklyn to the lights of Broadway, to the absurd excesses of Hollywood and back. He's received accolades and awards for acting in and or writing an incredible string of hit plays, films, and TV shows. Hairspray, Fiddler on the Roof, Mrs. Doubtfire, Independence Day, Cheers, La Cage aux Folles, Torch Song Trilogy, Newsies, and Kinky Boots. While he has never shied away from the spotlight, Mr. Fierstein says that even those closest to him have never heard most of the tales of personal struggles and conflict, of sex and romance, of his fabled career, revealed in the wildly entertaining pages of his 2022 book, I Was Better Last Night, a memoir. Fierstein, a visual artist since childhood, just had his first public exhibition of his quilts. You made that? The Quilting Adventures of Harvey Fierstein was exhibited at the Keeler Tavern Museum and History Center in Ridgefield, Connecticut in July 2025. Fierstein's vibrant quilts feature K-facet prints and hand-dyed fabrics. He pieces with a Bernina machine and quilts on a Gamel long arm, because we know you're going to ask. Now a little bit about Zak Foster. Zak Foster is a community-taught artist whose work draws on Southern textile traditions and repurposed fabrics. He practices an approach to design that is based in narrative and guided by intuition. He is especially drawn to preserving the stories of quilts and exploring stories we tell ourselves about the past, present, and future in his work. His work has been featured on the red carpet of the Met Gala, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, as well as various magazines, websites, and galleries. His book, The World Needs Your Next Quilt, and the community he hosts, the Quilting Nook, connect and inspire quilters and makers all over the world. Welcome to Textile Talks, Harvey Fierstein and Zak Foster. If you'd like to join me now. Hello.
I'm here. You're here.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you both here. Thank you so much. There we go. And Zak, I'll turn it over to you, and you just let me know when you want me to change the slides, okay?
Great. Sounds good. Thank you, Jamie.
Wonderful.
And for what it's worth, I don't see me or Harvey at the moment. Is that the way it's supposed to be?
It may just be because, Emma, can you do a highlight on both of them? That might help him to see himself. There we go.
I mean, truly don't need to see me, but I would like to see my conversation partner. Hi, Harvey.
You're a little postage stamp up in the corner.
Tiny, tiny, tiny. But that's all right. Is that one of the new ice-dyed hoodies you've made?
Yes, that is. It is. It's I made 17, more than 17 ice-dyed hoodies. So now everybody knows what they're getting for Christmas.
Spoiler.
Spoiler alert. But I did have a lot of fun. I've never heard of ice dyeing before, or what is it? A low water immersion dyeing, which is sort of uses the same stuff. But anyway, so I've been having a lot of fun because to create, I've been creating like a quilt size piece of fabric, whether cotton or I've used denim and velveteen, and then ice dyeing that, putting it up on the wall and saying, what should this be? And then making the quilts off the inspiration from that.
I can't wait to dive into all of that with you. I do got a little script thing I'm supposed to read. They tell me I'm
Oh,
supposed
have
to
a
say,
good time.
"Hi, I'm Zak Foster, and I'm interviewing Harvey Fierstein for the QSOS Oral History Project. Today's date is December 3rd, 2025, and we are starting at 1:13 Central." All right. In QSOS tradition, Harvey, tell us about this quilt that you brought. Actually, maybe we should take one step back. Tell us about Edna first, for those of us who don't know who Edna is.
I did a show, which I also did a lot of the writing on, called Hairspray on Broadway, and in Hairspray, the character was the Broadway music was based on a John Waters film that the lead female role was played by Divine, who was a transvestite entertainer, and then I in the musical version, Divine had passed away, and in the musical version, I got to play Edna, the role of Edna. This quilt shows a point in the show where Edna and her husband are dancing to a lovely, wonderful song that Mark Shaman and Scott Whitman wrote. And when the funny part is, I sketched it out. My quilts, it's hard to tell, are usually about 110-inch square. They're big, and so I'll make a sketch first, and sort of decide. And I made a sketch of Edna and her husband, and then I started making the background using a lot of Kaffe Fassett and Brandon Mabley fabrics, and then I started making our figures, and sadly, Dick went down the toilet. My husband went down the toilet. It just, I guess, because I used such busy fabrics for the background, having another figure in there just made it kind of too busy. But anyway, so she dances alone. Uh, but I also used a technique called cording, which I think everybody knows about, and I outlined the figure with uh, uh, yarn, um, like a big fuzzy kind of.
Like a chenille type yarn, right?
Yes, is it chenille? That's I couldn't think of the word. I was making believe I wasn't looking for the word, but
You found it. You found it. You're there.
I found you. So
Here we are. Harvey, what do you think it is about this scale? Like you like to go big, and here you are making these essentially king size quilts. What is it about scale for you in the pieces that you're making?
Well, to begin with, I made bed quilts. I started, I found this, I got a satellite dish, I think uh, uh, back then, like 1994, I think I got a satellite dish, and there was a HGTV at that time was actually a station and not just real estate porn as it is now. And they actually had crafting shows on it. And Alex Anderson had this wonderful show called Simply Quilts. And so I sit and watch this thing, and I said, "Well, I know how to sew, and my bedroom could certainly use a quilt." And so I started making quilts, and so I started making. I had a king size bed, so I started making king size quilts, and I think I'm just stuck there since. But I do like that size. I mean, I call myself a size queen, but I like to be able to have that feeling of I just I don't get a lot of my work out of little stuff. I do. I'm a big guy.
Yeah. Well, and you're used to uh, your work on a stage having to be a certain scale to be seen and perceived in the back of the house, right? And so it makes sense to me that
But it's
there's
also my feeling about quilts as because I was trained as a painter, and but you give somebody a painting and they're stuck sticking it up on the wall or in the closet until you come over, and whether they like it or not, they're stuck with this damn painting. But you give somebody a quilt, especially one as big as that, and the dog can sleep on it. You can throw it in the back of the car in case you go on a picnic. You got that extra board for your dining room table in the garage. You can throw it over that. There's lots of things to do. But with a little teeny quilt, what are you going to do with that? So this way, I give them something they can work with.
Do you have one of your own quilts on your own bed?
At the moment, I have two. It
Yeah.
was cold. It was cold last night.
Yeah.
I have two denim quilts on my bed at the moment. One is a sort of a piece of sort of circles, and then it's actually tied. It's not quilted. It's tied with red rope, and then I have another one that's denim on top of it. Cold night.
I don't know how you got out of bed. If you had two denim quilts on top of you, like I would just stay in bed all day.
And two dogs as well. I have large dogs.
And we're going to see them in a minute because we got a quilt queued up for that.
Oh
But
yeah.
I wonder if we could just take a step back here and think about, you've been quilting what for about 5 years now?
No, no, no. I started in '96, so that's like a lot of years. Yeah, that's like 30 years.
It's a few years. Yeah.
Yeah,
Did you,
but I
did
was
you
but I was just making like traditional quilts, or I'd make, I mean, I do my own thing, but I'd use a traditional pattern. I'd buy books that had all these wonderful patterns, and I'd make two quilts a year. Um, but then when COVID hit,
yeah.
somebody who's used to doing a lot of stuff, acting and writing and lecturing and all the stuff I do, and all of a sudden I'm in lockdown. I mean, I love my house, I truly do, but lockdown is lockdown. And so I wrote my autobiography, a good use of time. New York Times bestseller. I did all the publicity online because we were still in lockdown. Um, and then something else to do. So I said, I got the machine, I got, and I started back into making quilts. And when I went back, because I had no other artistic thing going on, all of a sudden the quilts became more and more challenging and more me and more my personal statements. And they become psychologically what's going on in my mind. They become the way to express myself, the way that I usually use writing. Um, yeah, they become more important. I was trained. I always thought I was going to be an artist. I mean, as a little kid, I wanted to be a cartoonist for Disney. And I went to the High School of Art and Design, and I got my BFA in painting from Pratt Institute. And then I had this little side thing with theater, and I sort of got lost down that rabbit hole, the road less taken. So finding art again has been wonderful for me. Um,
And this is the area that I'd really like to spend some time exploring with you, Harvey, that overlap and that intersection of the little detour of theater that you took with quilting and what they share and how they're also complementary and maybe distinct. Amy, let's go on to a couple more quilts and show the good folks at home the kind of thing that Harvey's been up to. So Edna was part of a series of sorts, right, where you're pulling theater into quilts. Can
yeah.
you tell us about these two and what you'd like people to know about them?
Well, one side on my screen, it's the left side. That's Fiddler on the Roof. It's Tevye, the lead character from Fiddler on the Roof. I did that. I performed Tevye for a little over a year on Broadway, and then I went on the road with it for a spell. And and then I surrounded the figure using cording. I surrounded the figure with some Chagall imagery. But okay, every quilt I do, I try very hard to do something I've never done before. Try a technique or something I don't want to ever repeat myself. There's sort of no reason to. So this is one of my ice dyed fabrics. It's cotton. It's 100, and I think this one's 115 by 100 and whatever. And I put it up on the wall. You can see I did it in indigo ice dye, put it up on the wall and said, "What is that?" And I saw all this sort of light movement, and I thought it was a night sky. And then I said, I still don't know what it is. So I started taking scraps of fabric and um, sewing them down. That became the central figure. You can see those are just scraps. And then when I started becoming, and then I said, "Oh, this is Tevye." I took I use chalk usually, a chalk pencil, because you can draw on it and then just wipe it off or wash it off. And I drew the figure and but none of the Chagall images yet. And then I put it on my long arm and began to sew, which is really what I like to do. I like to have that. I have a 14-foot frame. So at least it feels like I can go wherever I want to go. I love that silly machine. I have a Gamma, a computerized one, but I mostly do free motion now, thanks to Stephen Skybell, who you will meet later in our next section. He's the one who said to me, "What are you doing using the computer?" So anyway, but so I put it on and I begin to draw, and I find that the drawing takes over, and I find myself in this. So that's that quilt on the left side. Feel free to ask questions if you want. And then on the right side, I did a play by my friend Martin Sherman. He wrote a show that you might know, Bent, called Bent. And anyway, he's a wonderful, wonderful writer. And he wrote a show for me called Gently Down the Stream. And Gabriel Ebert and I did that at the Public Theater in New York, Joseph Pabst Public Theater, where Hamilton started. We did that. And I had this idea that I wanted to do a quilt out of using nothing but cherry wood fabric. I'm very much in love with their colors and with that texture, the feel of that almost suede kind of feeling. And so I made a sketch. A lot of times, what I'll do is I just take a huge roll of paper and stick that up on the wall and begin to draw from that. So I drew this of the two of us. I'm sorry, I can't show you stuff. I have sketches but anyway, I drew it of the two of us and I sent the sketch to Gabe and he said, "Leave my face out of it."
Why didn't he want his face in there?
I don't know. You know how heterosexuals are.
Self-conscious.
Very strange people. But anyway, and I absolutely adore Gabe. We've done 2 shows together now. Anyway, so I did this and did that very plain, sort of blocky kind of color and all that, and then everything was just free motion quilted. And I love the way this quilt came out.
Well, I love the image of you at the long arm just going to. And we're going to look at some of your quilts that are
Yeah, I think
that are
so.
like truly free form. Like you didn't know what you're going to do when you sat down or stood at the machine. And
Right.
let's see what comes out. But a question about these 3 quilts kind of as a whole for you is that so these roles that you've played, they have come and gone. And now you're making these quilts about these roles. What does it feel like to revisit the role or that time in your life? Like, what are you thinking about as you're working on these pieces?
Well, that's very much it. It's very much like if I was writing a diary. You use in your work, you use a lot more words than I do. I don't use a lot of words, probably because I write. So I don't, but I love how you use words. I try to separate those two things, my writing from my artwork. Though I have this feeling they're going to leak together. Everything changes, and everything keeps changing. But as I do it, I definitely have a feeling of I get to revisit the character. I get to revisit the emotional life that I'm feeling when I'm doing it. I mean, especially like the one of me and Gabe together. It was such a loving relationship that we had. I played an older man. How did that happen? And a younger man. And it was just this beautiful play that he wrote. and I got to visit that emotion with him. There's another one somewhere in there. There's a slide of La Cage aux Folles, of
I
one
think
of
that's next, Amy. You want to pull that up?
yeah, there. So once again, indigo dye on a huge piece of fabric, put it up on the wall, and said, "This looks like a spotlight." Right? So I said, "Who belongs in the spotlight?" And I thought about, well, actually, something happened. Um, I guess I can tell the story because it'll all be past by the time anybody sees this.
Surely.
That awful orange creature took over the Kennedy Center and banned drag queens and everything else in his loving act of art, because God knows he's who should tell us what art is. Anyway, so the Kennedy Center honors this year is one of the people being honored is Gloria Gaynor, the disco singer Gloria Gaynor. And the last big hit she had was a song from my show La Cage aux Folles called I Am What I Am. And it was her last big hit. So they came to me saying, we would like to perform that at the Kennedy Center. And I said, absolutely not. I will not allow my work to be seen at the Kennedy Center until the big orange is gone. And hopefully they don't paint the place with that gold spray paint that he uses on everything else. Anyway, so I was thinking about Zaza, the lead character, drag character, and the song I Am What I Am. And I was looking online through photographs and I saw all these people playing that role. I mean, everyone's played that role. I wrote the show in 1983, 1984, not yesterday. So it has been, and it's never closed. It's always playing somewhere. And everybody and their mother has played that role. And so I was looking through it, pictures, and the thing I saw in common was that pose of standing there saying, I am what I am, and how important that statement was. So I decided that spotlight of indigo would become that. The real fun part of this one, I used the word fun, and it wasn't not fun, is the whole dress is sewn in gold thread and the stars in the sky are all in silver thread. So I bought very expensive thread. I'm not naming names, and I could not get it to work at all. I needles and tension, and I'm calling up the thread company, and I'm calling up the needle, and I can't get. So I went over to, and I can say the name because they're gone now, Joann's, and bought bought the cheapest gold and silver thread they had. Worked just fine.
Go figure.
Sometimes it's a really good lesson.
Yeah. You know what? I'm sure folks out there probably have some more recommendations they could drop in the chat for you too.
Probably.
Metallic thread is just notorious for being difficult. Let's look at some other quilts.
But tell me, how do you manage it? What do you use?
Well, I do a lot of hand sewing, so I can just use whatever, and if it doesn't work, I'll figure it out. You know.
So the hand sewing is different than trying to stick it through the gamma or even through the other machine.
Well, you're not moving at the industrial speed of light, so the thread's a little more forgiving.
Okay.
Amy, let's hop on to the next quilt. Let's see what we got lined up to hear about.
Oh.
Now, here's a good example of how you put a big piece of paper up and you're sketching. These are your dogs, Bobo and Charlie. Is that right?
There's Charlie and Bobo there, and this chair. This quilt actually happened because of that stupid chair. When my mother passed, my brother didn't want to throw out a lot of stuff. I'm I'm a collector of too much stuff, but he didn't want to, and he kept this chair, which we call the punishment chair. When we were bad as children, we were sat down in this armchair where you were sort of stuck because you're in an armchair and you got yelled at there because you couldn't sneak out either side. You were stuck. So we thought of it as the punishment chair. Anyway, he closed his office, retirement, and brought the chair to me, which I immediately put in the garbage. And he called me up. He said, that chair better be there next time I come over. So I took the chair and I took a photograph of myself in the chair, thinking maybe I could just give him the photograph of the chair. And anyway, it inspired me to make this quilt. of me in the punishment chair, which I have now reupholstered in a quilt. I've now
It's incredible. I saw that on Instagram. That reupholstered armchair. God bless. Yeah.
well, they had my local quilt shop had a course in how to take a quilt and upholster a chair with it. So I went over there, I started watching, and I said, "Oh, this is great!" And I went right to an upholsterer with the chair and the thing and said, "You do it."
Does it still feel like the punishment chair?
No, no, now it's lovely. Now
New
it's lovely.
life.
And it was never, and it actually was from my grandmother. It was passed down to my mother, who passed it down to us, and then anyway. But yes, it is a beautiful addition. It's over there. I don't know if you can see it back there, but anyway,
Now there's some.
it's
Yeah.
here in the living room.
All right, let's look at another quilt, Amy.
But you can see the size of the drawings I make, and you can see behind that piece of paper, you can see that I was working on a scrap quilt of pieces that was sent to me by Liza Lucy. When she needs to clean out her house, she takes a box and mails it to me. And I take that challenge and I love it. Oh, who could that be?
I love this quilt. Drag exclamation point. You know, Harvey, one thing I really liked about when I was looking through your Instagram feed, you and me use capital letters the same. Like I love using capital letters. Like it's just how I can't write a sentence without a fully capitalized word somewhere. And so here we have drag in all capitals, exclamation point. Tell us about this one.
Well, so once again, looking for something different to do. I took black and white fabric and I made this checkerboard. That was done. I said, "What's it going to be?" And then I said, "Well, I'll just take some circles of the opposite color and applique those down." Did that and said, "What's it going to be?" And then I said, "Well, they kind of look like faces," and off I went. So these are drag queens, some of the past, some present. Of course, put myself right in the center. Um, and some of our friends of mine, some are people that I know from RuPaul's Drag Race. And I did this quilt of drag faces that I just love. So, and I had a lot of fun doing it. Yeah. What can I tell you?
You can tell me that you said on the post on here you said you weren't good at likenesses, but I beg to disagree. That like I recognized you right away. I recognized Trixie Mattel right away. Like
Well, Trixie's
you've captured something in their portraits.
Yeah, well, I don't think Bianca Del Rio was very happy. She's a dear friend. She's down in the lower left-hand corner, and and as much time as she spends on her wigs, and all I gave her was bangs. I don't think she was happy with that. The drag queen above me, the African, well, he's not American. He's British. Um, he wanted to play. He wanted to star in La Cage aux Folles in London. And I said, "Oh, that's wonderful," because I'd seen him perform. He's wonderful. And but wanted to keep that beard. And I said, You can't play that role with a beard." And he said, "Why not?" I said, "Because the point is of that show, they have to believe you are the mother. You're actually the mother, and then it gets revealed." And so, but anyway, that's how he ended up in the quilt. But yeah,
Did he end up with the role?
No, no, he didn't.
Okay. Tough choices. We all got to make them.
Exactly. You make your choice.
All right, let's take a look at the next quilt. I'm just trying to give the folks at home what that, we love looking at quilts, Harvey. So I got like maybe 3 or 4 more I'd love to hear from you about. And then I got some other questions. So this is
like Brandy Mabley, who is Kay Facet's life partner and business partner, designed all these fabrics, and we write to each other. Kate does not write online. I can get messages from Kate, but it's Brandon saying, "Kate said to tell you." So that, he never stops. I mean, I don't know if you've ever gone to one of his lectures or one of his classes, but we are talking about somebody who will be teaching a class while needle pointing and designing something at the same time. This is not a brain that ever stops. And so wasting time writing to people would be just a waste of time. So Brandon does the writing. Anyway, these are all fabrics by Brandon. I had wanted to do some sort of landscape. I didn't know what. And once again, I just started pinning this one. I just started pinning fabrics to the wall in different shapes. And this landscape began to appear. And then the boys began to appear. And please close your ears if you have tender ears. But Brandon yelled at me for having uncircumcised penises in other quilts. So I circumcised these gentlemen.
Good. Diversity. We like
Boy,
seeing everyone represented somewhere.
exactly.
Yeah. I'm struck that
It means circumcised.
yeah. I'm struck that so many of these pieces you're approaching improvisationally, which a lot of folks here at this textile talk, but also at home, work improvisationally as well. But it's just so beautiful to hear that like you are just responding to the wall. And I imagine there's a theater connection for you there as well with maybe how you approach a role or a scene or something.
Well, I think if you know you're going to put a lot of work into something, a lot of people get scared and they think if I'm going to put all that work in, it better come out good. That is such a scary way to approach something. You've got to be ready to throw it out. I had a painting teacher who you would sit there and you'd be painting the live model. And then he'd come up behind you and go, "That's good," and slash the canvas.
Like
And
just anti-preciousness, right? Is that what I'm hearing? Like just don't get too
no,
attached.
his line was, "No work is precious.
Hmm.
It's called painting, not painted." So I've always approached art that way, that you can finish making something, but that doesn't mean it's finished or that it had to be perfect. It is what it is. It wasn't a statement for that day or whatever. So that frees me up. I've actually seen people go into a quilt shop, go to buy a pattern, and then picking out the fabric that goes in that pattern. And because one of those fabrics was not available, that exact fabric, I mean, you can still find the color in something very much like it, but because that exact fabric was not there, they didn't want to make that quilt. So the whole experience of loving that quilt was about somebody else's choices and not your own. What a cheat to us as human beings. Not that there's anything wrong with doing what you see and falling in love with something, but to take it and make it your own, to make it not a precious thing. It's a quilt. Don't get all excited. It's going to go on the bed. The cat's going to pee on it. It's going to be fine. It's a quilt. Or it's going to go up on the wall and the sun's going to bleach it. It's a quilt. So I've always looked at it that way of, like I said, never doing the same thing twice. Always giving myself some kind of challenge, whether it's using a different kind of thread. I think I sent you my experimenting with size 8, with long arming size 8. I think it's a quilt called a tribute to Modigliani. I don't know if it's there. Anyway, I could not for the life of me. And the people at Oroville have been wonderful. I write to them all the time and they write back, trying to coach me through sewing on top of the quilt with size 8. And I end up with all these loops and stuff in the back. I cannot get the tension right. And finally, someone said, "Bobbin work." What's bobbin work? Put the size 8 in the bobbin, put the quilt sandwich upside down on the long arm, and sew from the back with regular thread with size 28 or whatever from the back with the size 8 underneath and see if that works. And it does. The only problem is you can't see what you're sewing. I mean, you see what you're sewing backwards. But if I'm switching colors and all that, Amy, do we happen to have that Modigliani quilt, or did I not send that to you?
I think it's about 3 down the line, Amy. It's a green piece with white lines, correct?
No, that's not. That's it. There it
This
is.
one? Okay.
No, back. There, stop. That's it. So that entire piece was sewn upside down. So I kept changing the color, knowing I was using a different color, but from the top, I couldn't tell exactly what I was doing. And I was doing these images that Modigliani is one of my favorite artists. So I was doing these sort of Modigliani kind of faces. Um, and then when it was all done, I took it off and there was no loops, no nothing. And I just had, it's not the flattest quilt in the world, as you can probably see, but I did have this wonderful, and this is size 8 thread. So it's thick and it's juicy. And I think it was maybe 8 stitches to the inch, maybe 7.
And it has such a incredible like illustrative illustrator feel to it, right? Like this feels like so many of my like notebooks in high school sitting through lectures, like doodling. Like I
Exactly.
really am responding well to this quote.
Yeah, and exactly. Well, I obviously from some of the quotes we just passed, which I guess we'll go back to, doodling or graffiti is kind of one of my things is get the thoughts out of your head onto the quilt. These ideas and these images. I mean, that's part of drawing. That's part of making art. As I said, you use words. You take that thought that hits you and you put it out in words. I do it a little differently with this sketching or this doodling or whatever you want to call it. So that's why this has that kind of doodling feeling to it, which I absolutely love. But when you see this in person, which is this sort of cheat because my quilts are so big, they really don't look the same in a photograph as they do in person. You walk into a room and this is 10 feet wide. It's a very different experience, but it really feels when you see this quilt like somebody sat there and hand sewed it.
I believe it. I believe it. Yeah, I was thinking what it must be like to see like the Tevye quilt, especially in person, because that one looked like it had so many details that'd be so rich up close.
I think I broke 8 needles making that one.
I believe it. I believe it.
Because it's couched over couching over
Mhm.
couching, and I use um, a Mexican macrame cording that I buy from Mexico. It comes in, and that's what I like because it has a real heaviness to it, and the colors are spectacular. And once again, just call me a size queen between the 8 size thread and the cording. It's what I like. I like that bold feeling.
It's an instant read.
Yeah. And it's not like you're ever going to look at one of my quilts and go, I wonder who made that.
Right. Right. Can we look at one more quilt together? I do want to save time for folks to ask questions because I see there's several in the chat. Can we go back to Blue Boy for a moment? Because Harvey, this is the first quilt of yours that I ever saw. This was like I call it my Mrs. Doubtfire quilt because that was when you entered
Not
my
that one.
life, right?
Not that
Not
one.
that one.
That's the
It's
that's
a black
another.
quilt with the blue boy on it. That
That's what.
and this one has text on it. Just now recognizing that. Right.
Yes.
What's the story, or what would you like to share with us about this quote? Because I saw it, it stopped me scrolling. I mean, this is, months ago before any of this was even planned. Had no idea we'd be chatting today, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this particular quote.
Okay, so a delivery boy showed up at my door. True story. I'm 73 years old. This doesn't happen every day. And anyway, that's my bedroom.
Uh,
And after he left, I sketched it to have the memory, and then I decided it's quote worthy. So I decided to do. I cut him out. I drew him first and cut him out, and then put a big sheet of black fabric down on the floor, and I appliqued it. And then I said, I'm going to put it right in the bedroom, and then all of this is quilted, all of these patterns and everything else. That the nightstand that has the words on it actually is an old It was from some sort of like Masonic group or something, and those are the steps or their philosophies. Um, though I changed the last one to mirth, I think it was faith, and I changed it to mirth. But otherwise, it's that's it. And the paintings and those lamps are in my room, and yeah. So I put this up online, and one of the social media places took it down with a note saying they got complaints because of the penis. Um, so I took an American flag, and I pinned it over the penis and photographed it and put it back up online. And they left it there for about a day, and then it came down again. And I got a note saying someone complained they could still see the tip. You can't please everyone.
You can't. I want to remind people they can always just keep scrolling.
Well, yeah, and the truth is, once again, cover your ears if you're sensitive. I shrunk them down so that people would not be shocked at what I actually lived with for those.
Well, that's very kind of you, Harvey.
It
Always
was,
thinking of others.
I didn't want to brag too much.
Yeah, yeah.
But like I said, I am 73 years old. I can brag.
We're here for it. Well, I'm here for it. I won't speak for everybody, but I'm here for it. All right. Let's take a look at a couple of questions. Remember, you can also keep your comments to yourself if they're not constructive. And let's take a look at a couple of questions that are in the Q&A. And if you got questions for Harvey, drop them in the Q&A. I'm afraid if they're in the chat itself, we might lose track of them, right? And so let's see. We'll start with our first question in. As a male quilter, as a quilter identifies as male, assuming, do you find it, what's been your experience in a traditionally female-led community?
Well, as I said, we have a small quilting shop, and obviously there are more women than men, but there's a whole bunch of men. They actually have a men's quilting group in our small town. So I haven't had that, and I also don't really care. I don't. I don't care that I'm in a room full of women. I love women, and I don't count how many women and how many men. It's just nothing that really affects me that way. And I learned to sew from my father. My father worked in a factory making handkerchiefs. He was a manager of a handkerchief factory. So we had a commercial machine at home that did not even sew backwards. It only sewed forwards. It could sew through anything. I mean, we sewed leather on it, we sewed everything, but he taught me to sew. So, and we had a mangle, the big iron that you pull down to iron. We had one, which I kind of ruined during my photography phase when I was drawing prints in it. Got a lot of
I can see why that might not work so much.
I was not very happy with that. But so I never grew up thinking that men shouldn't sew. In fact, I think that may be why I love Bernina. I'm not an ambassador, but a sort of spokes. I don't know what I am for Bernina, but something. But they sent me a Burnett straight stitch machine. And all it does is forwards and backwards. That's it. And it's one of my favorite machines because it so reminds me of being a kid where you just sewed, like there was no great complication here. You sewed or you didn't sew, period.
That's right.
I love that.
And it was enough to make something, right?
More
we didn't
than
need all the fancy stitches.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the women at my quilt shop when they take classes, they bring those little Singer featherweights.
Mm-hmm.
Those adorable little Singer featherweights. I mean, I love when they do that.
Yeah.
What do you sew on?
Well, when I'm not using these two hands, I got my grandma's universal sewing machine, which I don't even think is still in existence. This company.
Beige, right? It's sort of a brownish beige.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like a putty brown. And so similar, it only does straight stitch, but it has the cams in the top, right? That you have to stick in if you want to do like the zigzags or something.
Oh, you can do that. You
can, but you got to stick these like little round mechanical cams in the top that activates the stitches. I don't know, but I love it. And what's funny is she stopped sewing in the mid 80s, and the last thing she would have sewn would have been baby clothes for me and my brothers. And then I inherited her machine. And so when I brought it out of retirement, it was to make quilts. And so it sits in the corner of this room here. It's really sweet.
So you do everything by hand? You do all your quilting by
Mostly.
hand
Yeah,
and,
mostly.
and all your finishing and everything?
Yeah. Because I like how precise I can get with it. Which I'm kind of sloppy, but like I still like I know where I want my sloppy stitches to go, right? And I want them in a certain place. And so doing by hand it allows me that degree of precision I like. Do you work much by hand?
No, I don't. During college and during those years, I designed. I had to. There were no computers to do it back then. I used to paint canvases for needle points. So I did a lot of needlepoint work, and I embroidered clothing for a store called Serendipity 2 in the city. I did clothes for Jackie Onassis, for John Denver, for a lot of famous people. I embroidered clothes, so I sort of went through that hand sewing period. But I watched it 300, 400 times the G's Bend documentaries. And I do have this real longing to sit around a table with a bunch of people just hand quilting, which I've never done. And I'd like to do that. Have you done that?
Yes. There is something. Please find it up. Please make it happen because there is something when you're sitting at a quilting frame with a bunch of folks and you're shoulder to shoulder
Right.
and you're all just inches from the quilt. You go from like strangers to intimate confidants in like 5 minutes.
That's what
Like it feels like such a sacred space. Uh, yeah, yeah. I hope you can find a quilting bee somewhere. I'm sure many quilting bees would love to have you. So check it out.
we'll see what shows up on my Facebook and Instagram now.
Yeah,
Maybe I'll get an
yeah,
invite.
yeah. Well, maybe to wrap things up, I have a podcast on my own called Seam Side, where we explore what I call the inner work of textiles, right? How working with textiles shows us things about ourselves, shows us things about the world, helps us understand things better. And so, piggybacking with that concept, and I see Deborah has a question. No, excuse me, it just moved. Kim had a question about what does working with fabric and thread offer you that your other passions don't? Right. So, what did textiles offer you that maybe theater, writing, drag, etc., doesn't? What?
They're all
What?
so different. They're all so completely different. I mean, if you pick up if I'm sketching on the wall, on my big piece, I'm making art. But when I cut it out of fabric and I put it and I applique it down, there's something very textural about fabric. Um, I do love working with other people's ideas, not only making my own fabric, with this dyeing that I'm into at the moment, but using other people's patterns and seeing what I can do with it. I have a quilt that I just made of my dog Bobo, but I used Tula Pink's new line of gray work. She has a wolf that looks exactly like Bobo. So I made an entire quilt out of those. And I love the challenge of what did that person have in mind? And can I make it into something of my own? I see behind you, it looks like a lot of solids, but you use prints.
I use everything, but yeah, I probably gravitate towards solids or really small prints. I like how small prints or solids bleed together to make. Well, I guess large prints do that too. Yeah, I like solids because I think they give me the cleanest shapes. And so I
Right.
think because my own style is like, sloppy and a little haphazard and raw edges and all that,
I call it
maybe what's that?
pokey. Pokey. You're pokey.
That's it. And so it's like maybe by working with solids, it allows me to have a little bit of quiet and simplicity in the all that textural detail, you know?
It was funny. I'm sure I didn't send this, but I was watching So Yeah quilting, something, and they had a pattern that looked kind of fun to me. It was just a mess of colors and whatever. And I made the quilt, and I said, "This is too boring for words," and so I drew a giant boa constrictor and cut it out of Brandon Mabley's fish mouth fabric and sewed it down, and then realized, oh, I could make it 3D, and I stuffed it and made this three-dimensional quilt, which none of my friends want this quilt. Nobody will sleep with it.
I was
Everybody,
wondering if you had that one on your bed, actually, when I asked that
no,
question.
no. Well, yeah, but anyway, so I made that, and I got a lovely note from Brett. That's how I met Brandon Mabley. He wrote to me and said, "What a great use of my fabric," and now he tells me exactly what to do all the time. Like that, the Edna quilt that you started with. I was almost finished with that, and I showed him a picture, and he said, "What are you going to do for the binding?" And I said, "Well, I very often I just use whatever's left over, and I just sew it together, and I make a binding, of scraps." He said, "No, no, no. I'm sending you the fabric for the binding," and had Liza Lucy send me this black and yellow fabric that I had to cut on the bias, which I almost never do. I always just
It's a lot of work.
I
Yeah.
did, but it was striped, so it had to be on the bias. And so if you look at that quilt, that black and yellow fabric, it was suggested by Brandon, supplied by Liza, and um, and it's called community, right? Isn't that what we love about quilts? I mean, we work alone, but there is something communal about it. We are in a line where I think we're all aware of the people that came before us. We're not making bed covers, really. We're making something else. We're making things to leave to our family, to donate to. I don't sell my quilts, but I donate them to places that sell them. Um, uh, Community. That's what quilting is.
I think that might be a beautiful thought to leave it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could not ask for a better segue. It's as if you were a professional performer or something, Harvey. Oh, what an incredible interview. I just loved it. And I don't want it to end. And luckily, it doesn't have to end. We are going to continue at 4 p.m. And I hope that you all will consider joining us. I'm going to post here the link again. Thank you so much, both of you. What a cool window into your artistry, Harvey, and all the connections are just fascinating to me. So I hope we're going to talk about that some more at 4 o'clock, particularly this background in having a dad who taught you to sew. That is just so wonderful. Thank you both. And if you all would like to join us, Emma's going to put this link in the chat if she hasn't already. Again, we'll start at 4 p.m. You will receive the Zoom link when you register. And just loved it. And I want to also tell you about next week's Textile Talk. It'll be the last one for the year, I think. And it will be presented by Surface Design Association. The title is Craft and Craftivism. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you to all of our audience members, Zak and Harvey, and all of our sponsors too. And I'll let our sponsor video play us out, and we'll see everyone at 4 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
Yeah.